Good afternoon and welcome to today's RIT webinar, part of a series created exclusively for RIT alumni. I'm Lydia Palmer, Senior Director of Marketing and Communications in the Division of Development and Alumni Relations, and I'm your moderator for today's webinar. Today's webinar is Creating an Unforgettable Business Event. Our guest presenter is Tracy Armstrong, a 1989 alumna from RIT's Hotel, Resort, and Hospitality Management program. Tracy is founder and president of Armstrong Connections, specializing in events consultation and training and executive lifestyle tours. Tracy has been executing business events, large audience conferences, festivals, and tournament events for 25 to 1,000 people for 30 years. Her company specializes in providing personalized, high-end tour services to several human resources teams who are recruiting C-level candidates to leadership positions in Rochester and the Finger Lakes region. Her career has included executive leadership, collaboration, sales, marketing, and business development. Prior to launching her own business, she was director of community-wide convention marketing for the Joseph A. Floriano Riverside Convention Center and Visit Rochester. She led a stellar team of sales professionals responsible for economic development through the booking of meetings and conferences in Monroe County. Tracy was the 5th female president of Rochester Rotary in 2014-2015. The club is 103 years old and the 34th largest in the country with over 400 members. Tracy embodies a strong commitment to service above self and giving back to the community. She is married and a mother of 2 and enjoys all the rich culture and treasure the Rochester region has to offer. Tracy, we're happy to have you with us today, and our audience is all yours.
Good afternoon. It's great to be here. Thank you. Always a pleasure to step back on campus and see all the wonderful things going on, particularly coming off a great Brick City weekend, which I was glad to say I was a part of, and offering tours to the parents of these great students we have here. So thank you again. Okay, create a business event that matters. For most of you folks that are listening, you have attended many events, you are maybe planning events and so on. This is just one way to look at it. And there are really no particularly wrong answers per se in some of the questions we're going to get, but it's just a way to take a look at what we do in events. So let's go to the next slide. A key thing, and the reason I put this slide second, is you need to define the purpose of your event and you need to choose the team. And I'm a strong proponent in deciding what your purpose is in having the event. Why are you having it? But allowing your team to be part of that decision. And it's because they're going to be part of the execution. They're going to make sure that the vision is carried out. Everything is structured around the purpose of why you're having the event. So this is pretty straightforward. You're going to name very easily the team captain. All the decisions would go through the team captain. They're the team lead and they're responsible for keeping the team moving forward and making sure that everything we're doing adheres to the vision and mission of the event that you're going to have. And that can be any kind of an event, personal, business, board meeting, anything. The next key element to your team would be the program administrator. This is a key role and it's significant to the success of the event. This is the person that's going to detail everything, the venues, gather the contracts, help with the menus, get these speakers if that's appropriate, set the agenda or create and help with the program. What's the attendance? Where are we at with the head count? The seating, if that's appropriate. Is there travel involved? Deciding what gifts you're going to collect or give, and then reporting the sponsors and so So the program administrator is really key to this team. And the other very, very important team, and I think, Lydia, you'll appreciate this, is the Marcon team. This is essential. These are your folks that are going to create what I call the ideators. They're going to implement everything that has to do with your media and the marketing to the attendees, the creativity. They're going to build the brand of what your event is and ensure it's consistent throughout the entire event, whether it's pre or post. So they are significant in what you're trying to do and a key part of this. And then you've got the operations liaison. This person is also key. They're the ones that are going to really help, in overseeing any kind of AV and technical needs, the room setup, what's the volunteer network that you might need for the event, and so on. So the other thing to think about here is, obviously, if you don't have a team that can be 4 separate individuals, if you're going to want to combine teams and people within the jobs, you can certainly do that. So this isn't going to apply to everybody, but maybe the team captain is also the program administrator and the operations liaison. I mean, we pretty much know that depending on what type and size of the business you run, how many people you have to do that. So, and I don't know, do we answer questions now, or
No.
They come in as they come in?
And if anyone does have questions as we're going through, again, please enter those into the chat box and we'll be happy to answer.
So the only other thing before we change the slide there is, remember, the devil is in the detail. And that is key. So it remains true no matter what you're doing, baby shower, wedding, so on. Devil's in the detail. Okay. So here's the next thing I say. Decide why are you gathering? What is the conscious decision for bringing people together for a reason? What is the purpose? These are some questions that you should ask yourself. So the purpose of the event is the significant issue here, so to speak. It's not the category of the gathering. So for instance, board meeting is not the purpose. That's the category. So what is the purpose of why you might be holding a board meeting? Is it to ignite new ideas within the board? Is it to discuss new policies? What is the purpose of the board meeting? And then you're going to build from there. If you want to host a client event, ask yourself, what is the purpose for us to gather and host a client event? Are you looking for business partners or new clients? What is the purpose for our guests attending? Is it a networking or new connection event? It's very key that you know what the purpose for why you're getting together. If you, in the way in which you're going to define the purpose, you're going to ask yourself some questions. You're going to drill down. Think of what would be different in my event. What makes this event different? You always know the purpose before designing the event. Don't make the category the purpose and expect the event result to be different. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Be specific about your event's aim. A lot of times what happens is, if we're hosting a board meeting or a baby shower or a wedding, we don't discuss the purpose. We sort of fall right into what the novelty is and the same old platform. And that's okay, but it's not creating a significant event. It's not, it's just making it the same event as it always is. And and that's not really what you want to do here. And I'm suggesting that you do something that's more focused. You focus the purpose. If the more focused the purpose of the event, the better the execution is. So write a description and name the event. So for example, you want to have a hiking club. So that's fine, you can have a hiking club, but let's drill it down a little bit more. It's a hiking club with dogs, or a hiking club spotting new trees, or so if you, obviously that's not a business event, but what I'm saying is create a purpose, write a description and name the event, and be bold. Document the meaningful reasons for why you are going to gather. So is it that we're going to have an event because we want our guests to learn more about our business? Are we gathering our guests because we want to thank them? Are we gathering because we want to get to know them better? And what you do with this collective group of the team that you put together is you brainstorm this out. And so if you know why this event is important to you, then it makes it a lot easier to create a rich telling principle or story or purpose that will bring everybody together and igniting the passion that you want your team to have. And so, you know, people are going to already come to the table in terms of if they're working for RIT or a company, they're already passionate about the place where they're working, you certainly hope. But now let them be passionate about this event. And it's going to make a bigger impact on those that are attending. Okay. So here's where things get to the purpose. The purpose is your tool. Now you can begin with the details. So who is invited and do they fit the purpose? This always becomes an interesting conversation because people don't want to close the door. They don't want to not invite people. But you do have to ask yourself, based on the purpose, is everyone that you're going to invite, do they fit the purpose? And, you know, that can ignite some good, strong conversation, and maybe with the Marcom people. They don't want to exclude anybody. But there are times when I think you have to, depending on what it is you're trying to accomplish.
I would say we have people who fit the purpose and we have people who help to move the purpose forward.
There you go.
So some of them are connectors.
Yeah, and so that's exactly what happens. You start to drill down on what those two different folks would mean if they were invited. And you'll find probably that it makes good sense to have them both, right? Again, you know, unless this is a brand new, you know, unless you're inviting brand new folks that don't know your story yet, then you're going to want to have a handful of those folks that do know your story, but you're not going to want to pack the room and bore them because you don't want to tap out that market of the folks that you've cultivated to be like, the last time I went there, I heard the same thing, you know. So again, hey, stay true to your purpose when you're vetting your invitees. Size of the event, that does matter, right? Pretty straightforward. So if you have a smaller event, it obviously, if it's a networking situation or more intimate, it's a higher level of sharing and discussion, the smaller the event is. And so you might decide to have multiple events. So again, it goes back to what is your purpose? A medium-sized event, you can still build trust and you can still have close conversation. And then a larger event it's more detailed in the execution, and you have to think probably more about where you're headed and the attendee experience, and continually to make sure that you're checking back with what is the purpose. And then the purpose is going to, go back to the location. And again, that could be key to your success based on what your audience is. And so a couple things. If you're having a board meeting, do you want to do it at a board style table? Do you want to do it in a dark room with dark panel, or so on and so forth? So, but that goes back to what is your purpose. So if your purpose is to stick with the same old thing, then you can certainly go back to meeting in the same place. If your purpose is to introduce your new chairman of your board, and they want to make some changes as it relates to the purpose of a board, then you might pick a different location. So again, it goes back to the purpose and using that as your tool to pick the location. And, food, time, month, so on. And that can be for, another event. So let's say you'd like to have a block party and you have it in the summer. Well, that's pretty straightforward. Why are you having a block party? Well, we're having a block party because we like to get together. Well, that's a little bit too basic. You like to get together. Why? You like to get together at the beginning of the summer in June, because as the summer gets going, folks get too busy and they can't get together. Okay, now you're starting to drill it down a little bit. And we know that it's a great time to know who is available to babysit and, build our neighborhood's resources and make people feel more comfortable. Or we have new people in the neighborhood and we want to make them feel welcome. So now you're starting to drill down on purposes and understand why you're holding an event and why you do it in that month and that kind of thing. So it kind of goes across all meeting reasons, so to speak.
Tracy, we do have one question, and I'm going to try and summarize this. Is the location sometimes a challenge because of it being the same old, but when you try to choose unique locations, you find that it's harder to actually run a purposeful event because the location takes over the actual event? Right.
So that's a great question. So in answer to your question, let's go to I want to go to the next slide. So a journey map. Okay. If you look at the next slide, so this particularly might help. A journey map is, charting out the attendee experience. So you're actually going to sit down. So in answer to your question, certainly the space can dictate the feel of your event. So what I suggest you do is you build a journey map, and that is chart out the attendee experience. See, your event starts as soon as they get their invitation. That's as soon as the event starts. So really, prior to you picking a space, you're going to sit down and journey out the attendee's experience. And you're going to have spaces in mind, because that's how it works with event people. We all have our spaces in mind. So chart out the attendee's experience. And then in your head, what, you're closing your eyes. It's what does the space need to be? Does it need to be big for our purpose? Does it need to be small for our purpose? Does it need to be bright for our purpose? And so before you get to the situation where you've picked a spot and then a purpose, I'm suggesting you pick a purpose and then journey map out what you want the attendee's experience to be, And then what, what is needed to build your audience. You want to eliminate friction, clear messaging. So if you begin the plan and you're staying true to your purpose and you're going through this whole journeying process, then you can begin to pick your spots as opposed to pick your spots first. Now, in a community like Rochester, any event planner is looking for the new thing, the new, not the same old stalemate. And I get that. But really, I'm asking you to define your purpose first. And you can make any space, mostly anything. So in making your journey map and in building your audience, you want to eliminate friction, clear messaging right out of the gate, right? That's the moment your event starts, is as soon as they hear about it. So the location, the time, the dress code. You want to surprise and delight your guests. And all that goes back to, again, what is the purpose? Brainstorm and produce the strategic content you need. And then you're going to work with, your Marcom people are going to be part of that conversation right from the beginning. And the other thing I want you to understand is acknowledge the power of your event. So if you're just holding a board meeting or you're just holding a client event, understand that if you have a solid purpose, that purpose is power, and that is going to get results for your event and what you're trying to accomplish. Did I answer that person's question?
I think so. And we have a second one here with regard to dress code and formality. Are you finding in the industry of events that formal events are still popular and draws for the audiences, or are you finding that we're leaning more to more casual, business casual, or casual events?
It goes back to your purpose. What is the purpose? If your purpose is to raise funds, you have the ability to think about, okay, so my purpose is to raise funds for a camp. Well, what are we raising funds for? Be specific. We're raising funds for a new pool. Why would people want to give to a new pool? Because it is impactful to this particular, so continue to drill down on the purpose of your event. And then you need to decide, okay, how are we going to create the purpose of this event with the dress code? Well, okay, are people going to ask us, what kind of pool? What are our guests going to ask us? How much money do we need to raise? So the point of it is that you could start to create this event around raising funds for a pool with pools around. And then you get this purpose and this theme, and then you develop the dress code. Now, it's not as simple as that, because this town, people, there's a particular set of people that like to get dressed up and like to have a more formal purpose. And I think that I personally find that there is a time when you're having a gala. That's a particular audience. So I do think people are tired of, there are a whole sector of folks that are tired of that. But that's, that gets back to audience, right? It's a double-edged sword when you're raising funds.
Yeah. And I would say if you can't do a big gala well, don't do it.
Right.
Right? Because there's a lot in that. There's
Yeah.
a lot into it. Yeah.
I mean, so the other thing you get out of this whole thing is that there's one way you look at this is that people just simply are being very mindful of their time. So you want to make sure that the gathering that you're creating is significant or purposeful. I keep going back to that, but I think it gets skipped a lot. I think you skip right into we're having a gala.
Because we have one every year.
That's right. Right. And so where are we having it? And you so all I'm suggesting is just take a look at this and don't skip that step. As you drill down on an event and the purpose of it, you start to come up with new ideas. That's really all I'm suggesting. So I do want to get to the actual gathering. The importance of a host. The importance of a host is critical. And they're going to set the tone. It doesn't matter if you're having a baby shower or you're having a wedding or you're having a gala. You need to have a host, or you're having clients or somebody to your house. You're setting the tone of that event. And again, that doesn't mean, people don't want to hear somebody droning on. No, they don't, but you have to stand up and you need to welcome folks to the event. And the remarks should make folks feel welcome and honored and lucky that they've been invited and glad they are a part of something. And so it doesn't have to be long. If you are honoring someone, you can still set the tone by, welcoming everybody there and then just stating what's about to begin. And that's okay. So you want to make your remarks reflective of what your gathering's purpose is in the first moments, believe it or not. And it just lets people, they want to feel connected and part of something. So I can't say what I believe the importance of a host is. Now, a host is, if you're having an auction, the host isn't the auctioneer. That's different. The host is somebody welcoming everybody. Now, you can have a couple or a couple of couples or a couple of people that are the chairs of a particular event. They very well could have the dual role of being the host. But not always are those folks the ones that like to do that. You don't want to name a host that doesn't like to be a host, because people can feel that. You can acknowledge, the folks that are, let's say, the actual hosts, but they don't have to greet everybody in a way that's over the loudspeaker. Or does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So it really has.
So your host isn't your MC necessarily.
That's right. Very good. Yeah, right. It's important to have an MC. And again, if it's the person that happens to be the chair of a particular, or a couple that's a chair of a fundraising event, they may not want to do that, or they may. It really depends. But that's, it's key to get up and just, welcome everybody, and then you can be done if you don't want to have something drone on. I agree. People in these events nowadays are tired of it. They want to mix and mingle. So acknowledge that, but you can also just say a few things and then step away. The other thing is just going through what your team's roles are on the floor. That's key, and that's pretty basic. Everybody knows that kind of thing. You're going to create a run of show document. Here's how it starts, and you're going to make sure everybody gets it. You also want to have somebody that is either helping the host and guiding the host. And maybe you have a separate person with the MC, but a lot of times these MCs are pretty gifted on understanding when they need to be. But if it's somebody that doesn't do that often, you're going to want to have somebody be a point person with the hosts. Move it along. Now, is that helpful for a personal gathering? Yes. For a smaller business gathering? Yes. If you're hosting clients at an event and you want to thank your clients for being your clients, then I think who you appoint as the host should be somebody on the leadership team. If the CEO is not the person that wants to make the announcement, that's fine. You still need a host to be able to make announcements and reiterate what the purpose is of why you're there. So if you're there to thank your clients over the long haul, how are you doing that? Whether you want to make it casual, that's a little easier than in a gala. So the team knows their roles. All systems are a go, and that kind of thing includes pre-meetings for the events that are happening. So that all the caterers, AV people, and everything like that. So, prioritize your desired connections on site. And, what I mean by that is, know who your hit list is. Who do you want to make sure you get in front of for whatever reason? And the other thing is that the host should also make the last connection of the evening. And that should be a powerful message as well. Okay. Any questions?
Nope. I think we're good.
Okay. So, the audience, how did they feel? You can kind of judge on how your audience, how you did by your attendance, to be honest with you. A lot of times we don't give ourselves credit in the fact that we've done a pretty good job right out of the gate because we have a decent attendance. And you already know that you're successful in that, in most situations. Personal, wedding's a wedding, but you generally know that by your attendance, you're doing pretty well. Now, let's say you're not doing so well. Could be because something else is going on in town and so on and so forth. And you should have probably vetted that out way at the beginning or known where you've come in. But believe it or not, a lot of times knowing the attendance, it's already a decent measure of what you've done or maybe not done. Your audience, their reaction. What did you see that they were feeling at the event? And I don't mean, something was cold, the food. This is much more taking a look at your audience, not those kinds of details. Do you find that they were, looking for more? Or there was enough information for them? Or what types of conversations did the team hear? We drill that down, but that you need to decide if at the end of the event, is your own feedback from your own team enough to evaluate whatever it is you did? So, we can talk about surveys, and there are all kinds of apps and all kinds of things. And I think they're all good. But the question you ask yourself is, do you need to do that every time? Is your own intel enough? Is the fact that you felt you met your purpose enough? Did you want to garner leads out of this? Did you want your clients to contribute and connect with one another? Did you see that going on? Was that the feedback you received? So, everybody's being surveyed to death. And I think that right now is a topic. I just got a survey I went to a conference last week and I just got a survey, and if I fill it out, I could potentially win a gift card to Starbucks, which is great. But I feel like I'm crunched for time right now in the fall. So really, just decide, is your own feedback enough? And that's okay, whatever. And do you feel you fulfilled your intended purpose for the event?
Mm-hmm. Another quick question. Do you encourage people to do follow-up beyond a survey? So thank yous for attending, providing more information about the company, things like that.
Yes, I do. I do. Now, you know your clientele or your audience, and obviously you're going to want to talk about that, I think, prior to the event. I'm one that, if you're coming from an organization where you have sales folks or a team that are all part of it, I do like personal notes and thank yous. But I do, regardless, you're going to hit them with a thank you, within the next couple of days, and probably already have that. The Marcom team will, I've really already encouraged that right out of the gate. But yes, you're going to hit them with something. And the what of it, again, goes back to what was the purpose. And, what did you do? So when you're brainstorming the purpose out in the beginning, did the activities lend themselves to, to get to the success of the event? But yeah, you're going to hit them right out of the gate after you are done.
And another question, this is under the Beyond the Ballroom category. So outside of the typical hotel ballroom or hotel meeting space, have you had experiences of perfect mergers of location and purpose of the event in your career?
Yes and no.
Maybe you've got a perfect one and a not so perfect one.
Yeah, we did an event at the airport. This is going back quite a ways, because I actually, when I flew in, I walked in, the room isn't there anymore. We had clients come in and we did an event right at the airport as soon as they got there. And that was a great event. It was, non-typical space. Now, the reason it was a great event, I'll tell you right now, is you could think in your head all the reasons why it wouldn't be. Number one, it was because the people were all getting off planes and they went right into the event. That would not be a great location unless you really thought this out well and took the friction out of any local person getting to the airport. And so that event worked perfectly for what our purpose was in what we were trying to do. We were trying to get everybody comfortable right away. And we wanted them to mix and mingle with one another because they did not know one another. And so, that was a good event. Recently, I did one that was not such a good idea per se, because it was costly. And the other thing is this is the same thing. Get things in writing. And get your understanding of what a particular facility can provide, in the very basics. But the other thing is when you're looking at another venue that you're not sure if they do or have ever done events in this space, it's okay to be bold. You really have to do a journey map. And I mean a journey map where you are walking through, and it's a journey map about that space. And so the odors, the sounds, the lighting, parking, heating, cooling. Don't always try to fit a square peg in a round hole. And that goes the same thing. If you're meeting at a standard location and you're asking them to do something for their event, and it's not something they've done before, that might be fine, but you want to sit in meetings and make sure they understand. You're not going to want to do 7 things that they've never done before, because you're pushing the envelope and it could kind of backfire.
Okay, here's another question. What's your opinion on moving people during an event? So if you have the opening part of the event in one room and then everyone needs to move to another room, or if you have an event that has 3 or 4 elements to it, is it okay for the elements to be spread out into other rooms, or should everything be contained in a single room?
Well, that's a great question. So I've done them all. And my opinion is try to have everything as close to one another as possible. Really. And although, so I'm going to say that with a caveat. Like a Gen Z, millennial, younger crowd, they don't care about being bounced all over the place. They really don't. They like it. Some folks more professional, and particularly if there's different, I'm going to say, tracks going on, the more spread out you are, the less possibility there is for folks within other tracks to mix and mingle and go into the other area. And so honestly, my feeling is have everything as close together as possible so you can merge everybody and feel more a part of a bigger group.
Okay. Last question. Do you have an all-time favorite event you did?
It's a tough one.
30 years, Tracy.
Well, I really liked going to the PGA in Kiowa Island the year before it came to Rochester. But I didn't do that event. Yeah, I'll tell you what, I do have a favorite per se. We did a lunch for 3,000 people in Tampa. And we were promoting this particular group of people to want to come to Rochester. So we had to produce a film and a video in advance. That was great fun and educational and great opportunity for us. And then I worked with a guy from Kodak back in the day that he created we wanted to get a bunch of single-use cameras for the event and give everybody a gift there. And so that's great. And you got to, you call and get them and, purchase them. But we wanted to do something a little bit more. And be, it certainly said Kodak on it, but we needed to have something more Rochester in their mind, Rochester, New York. So we ended up printing it was a cell phone holder, like this little baggie with the skyline of Rochester on it. And so the dilemma was, when were we going to put the cameras inside the baggie and so on and so forth. So I called the guy from Kodak back and I told him what my dilemma was. And he ended up arranging it so that the little bags were sent to the Kodak folks. They put them all in, they packaged, and then they asked me, I said, this is how many people were going to be at each table. And because in an event like that, where you're going to have the space to build these cameras and make sure everyone gets them on the table, and or if their staff down there, because it was a union house, if their staff down there was going to do it, you need to make it as easy as possible, and you needed to make sure you had this right number and so on and so forth. So I'm going a little bit long here on this, but
It's okay.
the reason I liked that event so much is because number one, the Kodak gentleman was awesome. And he did what I didn't think was possible. And it was really all because I took the time to give him a call. And he helped me figure the scenario out. And so then the team was all, they were so pumped up about the event when we got down to Tampa, because the friction was taken away from us, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we could focus on what the messaging and the event and how we're going to do it. And so that is one of my favorite events, because I was happy that the community came together and it made that event very special. So that is a pretty basic event, but it's also cool to see 3,000 people, looking at your video and coming up and asking you questions afterwards. So.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And there was a hockey team staying in the hotel. That was pretty cool. So that whole trip was great. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. All right.
Do
you have anything else?
I really just want to say thank you. It's, again, everybody, that are planning events out there, this is just a little bit of a different way to drill it down. And I hope it was helpful.
Yeah. Could you take just a minute, because we do have our audience still here, and we have a minute for you to do this. Can you tell people a little bit, because they're sort of small events, very personal events. Tell them a little bit about the executive tour aspect of your event business.
Oh, sure. So I do something called an executive lifestyle tour. And that is where a company is bringing in a candidate from the outside, and they generally are looking at a C-level position within an organization. And I create a tour that's based on the candidate and or the candidate's family about what they are looking for in a community to call home. And it's really great, and they're generally a 2-hour tour. So I've done about 50 now, and sometimes they're for the same position. So I might do 6 candidates for the same position, but honestly, I'm mostly doing the spouse. So the spouse wants to know, the things that are more personal. About, maybe they have kids that are in schools and particular interests, whether it's swimming or karate or hockey or, or I have a couple that, their kids were grown and they liked food and they liked to work out and they played golf. And so, that was great because, I could research based on all of that and tour them around for 2 hours. Now, a couple things. I do ask them pretty immediately, do you want to live urban or suburban? And that will dictate our tour. I will say that because of my background, because of Rotary, because of the Convention Center and Visit Rochester, you have a lot of contacts. So, it's no problem just to veer off and go a different direction or call somebody and say, hey, can we come and talk for a moment? So we did have a candidate whose spouse was an artist. And so I talked to Lewis at Artisan Works and I set up a private tour. And I mentioned what the background and so on was. And we went and took a tour and it was really great. So
Lewis is an experience unto himself.
Yeah, he is. He is. And, the funny thing is he remembered, so I called him a few weeks in advance and then, the day before, but he still remembered everything that we had talked about. And ironically or gratefully, they accepted, the spouse accepted the position and they moved here urbanly. And it turned out that they were interested in fixing up older homes. And so we veered off into the South Wedge and went to some of the old house part, places and looked around. And they actually never mentioned to me that they had an 8-year-old, which was fine. They were, focused on what they were focused on. And so that's the real fun of it. And I like people. I'm a naturally curious person and I like people. So that's been it's been great fun. Now, I want to say one other thing. I've done a couple of tours for a manufacturing organization that were looking for folks to work in their manufacturing company. And, was not necessarily a C-level, but it was a group of about 10 folks, and they ranged in all age from 21 on up. We took a bus tour with them. Now, again, knowing the audience for that particular thing, I started in a community very near where the company was, and it happened to be out in Ontario County. And then we moved from Ontario County right on into downtown Rochester. So, you create this experience as you want them to feel. They want to know how far from where I would live to work. Then the next thing they want to know is where can I eat and play? And it really is that simple.
And thank you for sharing that. I think it's an interesting tie-in to your years of experience as an event planner to approach the idea of giving someone a tour as sort of this little personalized event, and that saying what's the journey and what's the experience for the individual.
Right. What's their purpose? And the other thing is you want to make them comfortable. I mean, we get that from the hospitality business.
Yes.
Again, everything, water, warmth, cool, if we're too long in this place, give me a sign and we'll move it along, or, tell me that kind of thing. So that's, we're really, and that's about sales. But the one other thing I want to say is because in my past, we would bring clients in as site selectors here, folks are going to ask those questions about crime and poverty and so on and so forth. And you have to be on your toes and able to answer. And sincerely, straightforward. We've got some strides to make, and we do other things really, really well.
Yeah.
And I also think it helps, per se, I'm not from Rochester, but this is where I chose to live and raise my family. And I'm very honest about that.
Yeah. Well, that's great.
Yeah.
Well, I want to thank everyone for joining us today. If you have any additional questions, you can email them to ritalum@rit.edu, and we will direct your questions to Tracy. Note that all participants will receive an email from us in about a week with a link to today's webinar recording. We want to thank Tracy for joining us today. And we also want to let everyone know that we have 2 upcoming webinars in November. On Tuesday, November 12th, our next webinar is Overcoming Life's Obstacles. We'll be joined by decorated Navy veteran and 3-time cancer survivor Keith Koster from the class of 1982. And then on November 19th, join us with Doreen Haller from Best Times Financial Planning. She will present Women and Finance, a look at how women can and should approach their financial plans. Thank you all again for joining us today.